The old rusted sign creaked in the wind, its eerie sound echoing through the dense forest. Whispering Woods, it read, the paint faded and peeling like sunburned skin, a testament to the passage of time and the countless stories it held.
We shouldn't be here. This place gives me the creeps. Everyone knew Whispering Woods was haunted. Tales of ghostly apparitions and strange noises had been passed down for generations. But we were teenagers, and teenagers do stupid things, especially when dared. The thrill of the unknown was too tempting to resist.
See, nothing scary. It's just a bunch of old stories,
said Emma, my best friend. She always acted tougher than she felt. Her bravado was a mask, hiding her own fears. Not me. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine, and it wasn't from the cold. The atmosphere was thick with an unspoken dread. The trees stood tall and menacing, their branches clawing at the sky like gnarled fingers. They seemed almost alive, watching us. They whispered among themselves, their secrets carried on the wind. It was as if the forest itself was alive, communicating in a language we couldn't understand.
Flashlight, check. First aid kit, check. Ghost hunting equipment? Are we seriously doing this?
Ryan, always the practical one, checked his backpack and raised an eyebrow. He was skeptical but didn't want to be left out.
Dude, you gotta believe. We might find actual paranormal activity. Imagine the stories we could tell.
Jake, our resident conspiracy theorist, grinned. His excitement was infectious, even if it was based on wild theories. I rolled my eyes, but inside I was nervous. The stories of Whispering Woods had always scared me, and now we were living one. The woods had an eerie silence, broken only by the rustling leaves and our own nervous chatter. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow more menacing. As we ventured deeper, the sunlight began to fade, swallowed by the thick canopy above. The forest grew darker and our path less certain. The air grew heavy, thick with a strange energy that sent goosebumps prickling on my skin. Something wasn't right. It felt as if we were being watched, as if the forest itself was aware of our presence. We huddled closer together, our flashlights barely piercing the darkness. Every rustle, every snap of a twig made us jump. The stories of Whispering Woods played in our minds, each one more terrifying than the last. We tried to navigate using a map, but the paths seemed to twist and turn, leading us deeper into the unknown. It was as if the forest was playing tricks on us, guiding us to a place we didn't want to go. "Did you hear that?" someone whispered. We all stopped, straining to hear. The whispers of the forest grew louder, almost as if they were speaking to us, warning us. Fear gripped us. We held hands, trying to find comfort in each other's presence. The sense of dread was overwhelming, and we knew we had to leave. But the forest had other plans. Panic set in, and we started to run. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees forming a barrier. We had to get out, but the way was unclear. Whispering Woods had us in its grasp, and it wasn't letting go.
It's getting cold,
I said, pulling my jacket tighter. The chill seemed to seep into my bones, making me shiver uncontrollably. My breath formed little puffs of smoke in the air, and I noticed then that a thick fog was rolling in. It was as if the forest itself was exhaling, breathing out a dense white mist that enveloped everything in its path. It moved like a living thing, swirling around our feet and snaking between the trees. The fog seemed almost sentient, curling and twisting in ways that defied the natural flow of air.
Just a little fog, Sarah. Don't freak out,
said Emma, but her voice wavered slightly. I could tell she was trying to be brave, but the fear was evident in her eyes. I knew she felt it too, the sudden shift in the atmosphere, the feeling of being watched. It was as if the fog had eyes, peering at us from every direction. The fog was getting thicker, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Every step forward felt like a journey into the unknown, the dense mist obscuring our path.
We should turn back,
I said, my voice barely a whisper. The words seemed to hang in the air, swallowed by the oppressive silence of the fog. The others were silent for a moment, their faces illuminated by the pale beams of our flashlights. The light cut through the fog in thin, weak lines, barely making a dent in the darkness. Even Jake looked unsure now. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by a look of genuine concern. The fog seemed to muffle sound, creating an unsettling silence that pressed in on us from all sides. It was as if the world had been muted, leaving only our anxious breaths and the occasional rustle of leaves. Suddenly a twig snapped nearby. The sound was sharp and jarring, breaking the eerie silence like a gunshot. We all jumped, spinning around to face the sound. Our flashlights darted wildly, trying to pierce the thick fog and reveal the source of the noise.
Who's there?
Ryan called out, his voice echoing strangely in the fog. The sound seemed to bounce back at us, distorted and eerie. There was no answer, only the rustling of leaves and the whisper of the wind through the trees. The silence that followed was even more unnerving, but I could feel it, a presence cold and unseen lurking in the fog. We were not alone. The realization sent a chill down my spine, and I knew we had to get out of there before it was too late. The air crackled with static electricity. I felt a cold dread pool in the pit of my stomach, a feeling I knew all too well from my own encounters with the Upside Down. This was different, though. This was something ancient, something tied to this place. A low moan echoed through the trees, sending chills down my spine. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end.
Did you hear that?
Jake whispered, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. Before anyone could answer, a figure began to emerge from the fog. It was tall and gaunt, its form shifting and wavering like a heat haze. Its eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, piercing the fog like beacons. It wore a long, flowing gown that seemed to be made of shadows themselves, and its hands were skeletal, bony fingers tipped with what looked like glowing embers. A scream caught in my throat, but I choked it back, too terrified to make a sound.
Dude, it's a ghost!
Emma breathed, her voice filled with awe. The ghostly figure drifted closer, its moans growing louder, more insistent. The air around us grew colder, a chill that seemed to seep into our very bones. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. Panic surged through me, a primal urge to run, to escape. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a desperate plea for survival. The shadows around us seemed to close in, pressing down with an almost tangible weight. But my legs felt like lead, rooted to the spot. Fear had paralyzed me, turning my muscles to stone. I could hear the others shouting, their voices distant and muffled as if coming from underwater.
We have to get out of here! The urgency in their voice snapped me back to reality, breaking the spell of terror that had held me captive.
I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. It felt like pushing through a wall of resistance. But the words came out, shaky and uncertain. We turned and ran blindly through the fog, our flashlights bouncing wildly, casting grotesque shadows that danced and twisted around us. The forest seemed alive, each tree a looming figure, each rustle a whisper of danger. Branches whipped at our faces, thorns tore at our clothes, but we didn't stop. The pain was a distant sensation, overshadowed by the sheer terror driving us forward. The sound of the ghost's moans followed us, seeming to grow closer with every passing second. It was a haunting melody, a reminder that we were not alone in these woods. We stumbled through the undergrowth, our lungs burning, our hearts pounding in our chests. Each step was a struggle, the ground uneven and treacherous. I could hear my friends' ragged breaths, their panicked gasps for air. The fear in their eyes mirrored my own, a silent acknowledgement of the danger we faced. We were lost, hopelessly turned around in the dense, fog-choked woods. Every direction looked the same, a never-ending maze of shadows and mist. Then through the swirling mist I saw it, a faint light flickering in the distance. It was like a beacon of hope, a promise of safety in the midst of chaos.
Look! The exclamation was filled with a mix of fear and relief, a desperate hope that the light would lead us to safety.
Mia shouted, pointing towards it. Her face was pale, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and determination. We surged forward, hope lending strength to our weary legs. The light grew brighter, a guiding star in the darkness. As we drew closer, the shape of a small log cabin began to emerge from the fog. It stood there, a silent sentinel in the night, offering a glimmer of hope. It looked old, abandoned, but it offered shelter. The walls were weathered, the roof sagging, but it was a refuge from the terror that pursued us. And right now, shelter was all that mattered. We needed a place to hide, to catch our breath, to regroup and figure out our next move. The cabin was our only hope, a fragile sanctuary in a world gone mad.